Like this show and want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And now you can even add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's music analysis, your own radio show, or something the world's never heard before. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hi, and welcome to the Vocal Fries Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Megan Figueroa.
And I'm Carrie Gillen.
So we always have to figure out who introduces the podcast each week. And it feels like My Favorite Murder to me, where they never know who goes first.
It's true.
So it also reminds me, and I want to say thank you for all of the well wishes on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I defended my dissertation without passing out.
But with passing.
And I tweeted that it was perfect because that morning I was listening to My Favorite Murder, and they were talking about how nervous they were to play the Orpheum in Los Angeles because like, it's their hometown. Mm-hmm. And I tweeted at them that I was like so grateful that like these wonderful ladies were talking about how nervous they were, and that I had my dissertation defense that day. And Karen Kilgariff replied to me and said, "Give them hell," and it was so awesome.
I know. I was so happy.
Yeah, she's so sweet. They're both amazing.
Yeah, they're very supportive, and I really like that.
I know. It's very Shine theory with them. They're like uplifting other women. It's so great.
Yes, which we should all strive to do.
Yes. So the internet really helped me, and thank you all. You all uplifted me. So, yeah.
That also reminds me, we got an email a few weeks ago now, I think, from Olivia James, who... is one of the co-hosts of Super Serious Social Justice Podcast, yes. Which you should also all listen to. Yes. Because obviously there's the social justice aspect that both of our podcasts have, so that's awesome. Anyway, so she sent us a message and she said, "Hey ladies, you guys have been one of my favorite podcasts ever. However, on Grammar Nazi, you ask who other than classic majors thinks Latin is the best language. And I have to come forward and say, me! Latin is fucking awesome! Of course, finding an old language cool doesn't mean you have to be a snob either, so thanks for fighting the good fight on the grammar snob front." And so I just want to say, yes, Latin is cool.
It is. I mean, on that episode, did I mention, I probably said this, but like Rushmore, I'm thinking of Max.
Yes, I saved Latin. What did you ever do?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think was on there as well.
Yeah, I mean, rep it again.
Yeah. I just don't want it to be more important than other languages. I think all languages are very cool. That's the only thing.
Yes.
And she also, I also wanted to thank you for mentioning that grammar policing is very, very ableist. I rarely hear folks mentioning ableism, and it's so embedded in language. Mm-hmm. Oh, so true. It's everywhere, and I know I still have some, and I try to dig it out, but it's embedded really in there.
I know, especially since so many times, I mean, not just linguists, I'm going to call it linguists here a little bit, but other people forget about sign language.
Yes, everybody does, yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, one of the things that most recently that came up about that was, I can't remember who it was, but somebody did the analysis and showed that women speak far less than men do on screen. And so someone said, well, Shape of Water isn't going to help with that. And I was like, well, okay, that's true. Speech is different from sign in that sense. But she's still using language on screen. And I think we have to find a way to say that still counts. Like she still has lines, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. So she's a very important
Yes.
character, and I don't want us to ignore that. So,
well, and I watched the Oscars, and of course I was on Twitter, seeing what the deaf folks that I follow were saying. They were happy about the representation of The Shape of Water, at least the ones that I was following, and they were happy to see it win.
yeah.
It would be good to somehow represent that those things are happening.
Yeah, she's still using language, and that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of erases it if we say...
Well, nobody said that.
That's not language.
But it does still erase it in the sense of
Yeah.
speech, like making speech more important than sign. And that's problematic.
Yeah. Yes. We got to fight the good fight, but there are a lot of people that forget about sign.
Yeah. And speaking of, well, not quite that, but continuing on the same kind of topic. So the end of her email is, I'd love to hear you guys do an episode on language around disability, for example, person first versus identity first language. Anyway, you're the best. Thanks for doing what you want to do. And I think we mentioned this before. We do want to get to that, and we just haven't yet. But yeah, absolutely. Yes. It's important.
Yeah, definitely. There are several episodes that we can do about ableism in language.
So much.
Yeah. And language around disability.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And then we also wanted to thank dictionary.com for listing us as one of the language podcasts you should listen to.
Yes.
And if you don't know it, we will post it again. But you should listen to all the podcasts on there.
It was just really exciting because I never thought that I would be able to, say, hey, the dictionary is talking about me.
Me either. I never in a million years thought that the dictionary would talk about me, even though I have co-edited a dictionary.
That's true.
But it just doesn't feel like quite the. I don't know. I just wasn't expecting it. So thank you, dictionary.com.
Yeah, I really feel like I've made it because at 16, my AP English teacher, who I loved, said her favorite book was the dictionary, and I just adored her, and I wanted to be like her. So now I'm like, well, your favorite book talked about me.
that is pretty cool.
So,
yay! One last piece of housekeeping. We're going to have a bonus episode for March, and it will be on Mr. Doesn't Have an Accent, Mike Rogers, and how problematic that is. I'm sure you can guess part of what we're going to say, but if you're interested, you can get that by becoming a patron at the $5 a month level.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to be like nerdrage.com.
Speaking of, that's what this whole episode is.
It's nerd raging for 30 minutes.
There's a lot of me sighing.
And
an excessive amount of me
not
sighing.
Just sighing. Heavy sighing.
Yes. I know.
And then me being flustered and not knowing what to say. Just too many feelings.
Well,
boiling.
Yes.
And, I don't know. Coming to the surface. All right.
All right. Well, hope you enjoy this one.
Hello.
Okay.
Nerd rage, right?
Yes. Yes. This episode is going to be nothing but nerd rage.
Yep. And now I'm now this reminds me of the thing that was going around, the ModCloth shirt called the podcast co-host shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about how it was sleeveless, just enough fabric or lack of fabric so that you could just gesticulate widely.
That's what it's for.
With your nerd rage.
Everyone was complaining about it, but I was like, but it's kind of a cute shirt.
Cute shirt, yeah. I mean, they have some ridiculous names for their clothes.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
And they always have. Right from when they first started, so.
Yeah. So, calling it a co-host, a a podcast co-host shirt. They were just like, what should we call this one? And that came up.
Well, one reason why I actually kind of liked it was because that means they think women are podcasters, which is kind of nice because that's not the stereotype.
That's true. That's a good point.
So I didn't hate on it at all.
Yeah. But what I really think is they need like a podcast co-host, like sweatshirt or like...
Yeah, I know.
Something really comfy.
It's true. I mean, you know, you can wear your pajamas when you're podcasting. And
yeah.
You don't have to be wearing such cute clothes. But I still liked it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so today we're talking about this Time article that kept being sent to us. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say that actually it's kind of an old article from the Muse from 2015. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure this is a list of words that I was asked to speak about for the list, the TV show. So I've already spoken about this list before, but yeah. I think we need to speak about it together.
Yeah, and I realize now that, I mean, the fact that this was from 2015 and that Time can just like retweet it or up it again speaks volumes. This is just a thing, like people are clicking on this.
Yes, right? It's total clickbait.
Yeah, like, I mean, the people that shared it with us on Twitter, of course, were like, look how ridiculous this is. But there are other people on Twitter sharing it like, people should listen to this, or, you know, like there are legitimate people out there that are like, will read this and be like, okay, wow, I shouldn't use these words anymore.
Yeah, people take it seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, who is this person who wrote this list? Jenny Haskamp. Who is she? Why is she an expert to you?
Right.
Nothing wrong with her, but, you know,
yeah.
she's not a language expert any more than most people are, so
right.
Why take her more seriously than us, who actually are?
Exactly. Literally experts on language. Thank you.
I mean, if you're going to listen to other people about stuff, make sure they actually are experts of what they're talking about. And even then, you should still obviously take things, you know, somewhat skeptically. Make sure that you're not just taking what everyone says verbatim, right? Like, think for yourself, but...
Right.
Anyway.
Yes. And it actually coupled well with another thing that we were sent at like the end of January, where this asshole bar owner in the East Village of New York or Manhattan, the owner of the Continental, posted a sign on his door that said, "Sorry, but if you say the word literally inside Continental, you have 5 minutes to finish your drink and then you must leave. If you actually start a sentence with I literally, you must leave immediately! 3 exclamation points. This is the most overused, annoying word in the English language and we will not tolerate it. Stop Kardashianism now." Like, I know, heavy sigh.
It's just so packed with bullshit.
Yes, packed with bullshit.
Like the Kardashianism thing, that's an attack on women, especially young women.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we've mentioned it before, and we'll say it so many more times, I'm sure, because people are hanging on to this. When you're attacking the Kardashians for the way they speak, you're not attacking, I don't know,
wealth or celebrity. You're attacking women. You really are.
Yeah.
Like, if you were attacking them, you wouldn't really talk about the way that they speak or the words that they use. You would talk about the message that they're sending.
Right.
Like, if you want to say that they're problematic in some way or other, of course you can, and you might be right, but you need to actually say what's problematic. If all you're saying is, if all you're doing is using Kardashianism as a shorthand for young women of a certain class, like, it's not okay.
Right.
Be specific.
Yes, be specific in your critiques of... I mean, and they might be very legitimate critiques, but we can't take you seriously if what you're attacking is the way that people speak.
Right.
And, I mean, I have no words. I mean, I do. I have tons of words. I just can't, like, I hate this. I will never go to the Continental.
No.
That's not a thing that's going to happen.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I mean, this guy is a real piece of work. So, first of all, his name is Trigger Smith, which is an amazing name.
Right.
He also hates It's All Good, You Know What I'm Saying, and My Bad. Which, okay. I think we know what that's code for.
Yeah.
But even worse, the bar became notorious for banning saggy jeans, a policy that he's defended by saying, if you have a problem with that, open up your own bar with no dress code or door policy and see how long it lasts. That crowd will alienate and scare away your mainstream crowd until that's all you have left.
That is seeping with racism.
Right.
Seeping.
There's no other way to interpret that.
Yeah. Like, scare away mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's all coded language.
It's all coded language for black. Yeah, it's horrible.
Okay.
So not only is he sexist, he's also racist. And, you know, this goes along with my interpretation of the world, where I think a lot of the isms and phobias go together. You know, some people only have one, maybe, but I think most people have a good package of them. So if they, you know, show themselves to be racist and you're a white woman, beware, they're going to also be sexist at some point, and vice versa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's intersectional isms, intersectional phobias. it's yeah. They do not discriminate with who they discriminate against.
Right. They really only like one kind of person.
Right. So anyway. Fuck you, Trigger. Fuck you.
Wow. All right. So, literally, the reason why people pick on literally, not setting aside the gender stuff, although that's obviously part of it, is because people have this idea that literally has to only mean in a literal sense. But there's two things wrong with this. One, originally literally meant, it referred to letters, like, of the alphabet. We don't use literally in that way anymore. And also that's related to literacy. You can see the connection there. So if we're going to use it the original way, then we should be using it to refer to literacy or something like that. We don't. The second problem is literally has been used in a more intense way, like as an intensifier, for at least since 1708. So Alexander Pope, who is not exactly known for being loose with his language use, once said in a letter to Henry Cromwell in 1708, "Every day with me is literally another yesterday." That does not mean in a literal sense.
Yeah, it just cannot. It cannot mean in a literal sense.
No. So you're wrong. It's old. This use is very, very old, and people have only started complaining about it relatively recently. I think it was in the last 100 years. It might have been more recent than that, but it's not been for the whole time. So back in the 1708, no one was complaining about literally being used in this intensifier way. Right.
And I mean, I hate to go back to sexism, but I have to think about how much I love the character Chris Traeger in Parks and Recreation, played by Rob Lowe, and how they've written him to be this like adorkable character who always uses literally as an intensifier.
Pawnee is literally the greatest town in the country.
And I just think, and it didn't hit me until when we were talking about doing this episode, that I find it so charming that Chris does this all the time. And I don't know if I'd find it as charming if it was a female character that they had written to do this.
Right.
Yeah, so this is my like internalized like misogyny or sex, at play here. And it's horrible. It's frustrating.
It is very frustrating. And I'm pretty sure they knew what they were doing. I'm pretty sure they were like, okay, we can have a male character do this, but we can't have a female character do this.
Right. And we're not like questioning his intelligence or anything, or his like competence at his job, because he's like the city manager, right? Like he has this important job, and and of course this is like in contrast to Leslie Knope, who has to be perfect all the time, and they do talk about like there's a lot of storylines about how she has to work harder and everything because she's female. So yeah, they probably did it on purpose.
I'm pretty sure they did. They're very clever writers. I think they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that a lot of people talk about how literally means figuratively, and so you're misusing it because you're using it with the opposite interpretation, but that is not what it means. It's an intensifier, not figuratively.
Right.
So again, if we change every day with me is literally another yesterday, if I say every day with me is figuratively another yesterday, that sounds really bizarre.
It's terrible.
That's not what it means.
Yeah.
It just means it's like another yesterday to a great amount. Like it's really like another yesterday. And that is also another case of something changing into an intensifier, really. So really used to mean in a real sense, just like literally.
Ah, of course.
Over time became an intensifier. And nobody complains about really. Truly did the same thing. Very did the same thing. If you look at the etymology, these things all just mean real. And they've all become intensifiers and no one gives a shit.
And now it makes me feel like literally is my baby and I want to protect it. I'm like, why is everyone bullying literally when you see that really is the same way in all of these other ones? It's like...
I think because it feels more contentful. I mean, it's a slightly longer word. We can feel the literalness still in it, whereas with very, I mean, that's been an intensifier for so long. We don't really think about ver as like real, but that's real true. we should. So real we really should, and we don't. So anyway,
but is it like veritas? Like is that very like that kind of is that related?
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Oh, what? Yeah, see, I don't see that immediately. What?
Yeah, so veritas is related to very. Yeah.
What? Okay. See.
Yeah.
That idea is literally the greatest idea I have ever heard in my life.
So I should also mention that. Ben Zimmer is the one who did all the work on this and showing like just how old literally is and how very and really and truly are also equally have undergone the same change over time. So yeah.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Yeah, props to Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about literally?
I fucking I love literally.
Me too.
It's like literally my favorite word.
Samesies.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and just get over yourself, guys. If you think like it's just like the worst thing ever, really? Like it's okay to dislike it. If you dislike it, you dislike it. But to like complain about it publicly, I think,
yeah,
you're just trying to make yourself seem cool, but. It's not really cool if everyone kind of semi-agrees with you. Anyway.
Yeah, and you might be letting your sexism show or something else.
Definitely. I definitely think it's sexist, so.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at some of the other words on this list.
Yeah, I was saving myself here because right when I read the first word, I was like, oh God, this is terrible. That
is a useful word, and there are two different that's, and so which that are you talking about? And both of them have uses.
And guess what? She probably doesn't know because she's probably not an expert on language.
Nope.
I mean, I'm sorry, Jenny, or whatever your name is, but...
Well, okay, so in this case, so her example is, I have several friends that live in the neighborhood, and she said, no, you have several friends who live in the neighborhood. Okay, both. We've already talked about this one. Both are fine.
Yeah.
And she says it's superfluous most of the time. It is superfluous sometimes, like you don't absolutely 100% need it. We can delete some uses of that. Like, I said that he left and I said he left. But sometimes, even where it's sort of like optional, I think it's easier to read if you add that. But anyway, whatever. That's not important. You like it, you use it. You don't like it, don't use it. Whatever.
And this is another thing where it's like different when you speak versus when you write. Like, yeah, when I'm writing and I have to follow the rules of like society, I'll be like, I'm editing and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see how I should probably like delete this. But when you're speaking, if it comes out, it comes out. Like, no one's going to go back and correct themselves with the word that.
Right.
It's just a ridiculous thing to ask of anyone.
Right. And we do want to point out that the title is 15 words you need to eliminate from your vocabulary, not from your writing. Like, maybe this is a different conversation with writing, although I still have some problems with it. But yeah, you can't get rid of that from your vocabulary. No.
Oh, the next
and then
one.
went.
Oh, God.
So this is a style question, right? So she's saying, I went to school. You should consider drove, skated, walked, ran, flew, or whatever. And if you're writing, especially if you're writing something more evocative, I could see how you would want to use a better verb.
But this is writing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's saying vocabulary. I feel like she must mean in writing.
Probably. Maybe the headline that might not be her fault, but you know.
Yeah.
But I went is sometimes the right verb. Yeah. Sometimes you don't know.
The next honestly and absolutely. She does not like these adverbs, eh?
I mean, they are sometimes overused, and sometimes I think people use honestly when they're like trying to obfuscate, but I don't think it's always the case. Yeah. And also, so her point is, the minute you tell your reader that this particular statement is honest, then you apply the rest aren't. I don't think it's quite that strong, but you are saying like this is more important than what the rest of what I've said is.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes you might not want to do that, but I just honestly is fine.
Yeah. And absolutely, adding this word to most sentences redundant. I mean, again, this is just so much more relevant in writing. It seems like she sounds like she's talking about writing.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, look, our friends Very and Really.
Okay, so in writing, I do delete. So I edit some on part of what I do for a living is edit, and I do take out a lot of varies because they do seem superfluous. However, in speech, not even noticed. I would never notice them.
Right. And listen to what she says about really. Unless you're a Valley girl visiting from 1985, there's no need to use really to modify an adjective or a verb or an adverb. Pick a different word to make your point.
Bullshit.
You are literally the meanest person I have ever met.
Yeah, so, hi, sexism. You're still here. You're always here, aren't you?
Yes. Sexism and ageism.
Yeah.
Always. And I do think that this is the most hilarious point. I don't remember who pointed this out on Twitter, but someone was like, oh, but woebegone is okay? So very is bad, but woebegone, that's a better option. No. I'm not saying woebegone is always wrong, but in many cases, in many instances, that's the wrong word choice.
Oh, yeah, because she's saying, what is she saying? If you're very happy, be ecstatic. If you're very sad, perhaps you're melancholy or depressed. Woebegone even. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, anyway, it's fine, to play around with vocabulary to like find a better word. That piece of advice is not necessarily wrong. It's just eliminating from your vocabulary. Redonkulous.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that anyone would tell anyone to do anything like that. I mean, okay, listen, our whole podcast is
That's true, but our whole podcast is basically don't listen to these people.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I would ever tell someone not to use a word is when it comes to slurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely say stay away from slurs.
Yeah, but I mean, now that the number 7 is amazing, listen, I love the word amazing.
Yeah. It's overused, sure, but come on. It's fine.
Listen. Always and never. Okay, she doesn't like those.
That makes no sense because sometimes you really need to say this never happens or this always happens. Now, often people use it when that's not true.
It's true.
But it's sometimes true, and so you have to use them, and you should not be eliminating these very important words. Haha, very from your vocabulary.
Right. Oh, there's literally's number 10. I'm surprised it's not number 1.
Yeah. We've already talked about that, and we could talk about it for ages. So if you want to hear us talk about it more, just let us know, because
I know there's so much more to be said, and I can just talk about how much I love it.
I could give you more examples from literature where literally is used as an intensifier, not as figuratively.
And I use it as both.
Of course we use it. We use literally. Of course we do. But it's always had these two it's had these two meanings since 1708 at the very least, side by side. Because words do that. Words often have more than one meaning. and we don't really worry about it that much.
Right. Okay, so the word just, she describes it as a filler word, which is true for some instances of just. But it's not always the case that it's a filler.
Well, she does say if you're using it as a synonym for equitable, fair, even-handed, or impartial, then you can use it, but otherwise you shouldn't use it. And I do think that just can be overused. Again, in writing. In speech, it doesn't matter. But in writing, it can be. And again, I will sometimes edit those out because they don't really help. But again, you can't eliminate it. And I just keep making the same point over and over again, so I will stop.
That literally went on forever. I thought you were never going to stop talking.
Okay, so we have number 12 is maybe, 13 is stuff, 14 is things. Stuff and things, listen, sometimes I just, again, same point. I'm not going to get rid of saying stuff and things while I'm speaking. It's a ridiculous thing. And yes, when you're writing, if you go back to like your English class in high school, of course your teacher is going to be like circling it and say like, use another word, use what you are talking about or whatever. But
yeah, most of the time you do want to have a better, more evocative word. But again, yeah, it's fine. And I forgot to mention with just, the only people who get picked on for that are women.
I was going to say, I use just a lot to ask for things. And I realize that, I mean, it's kind of hedging, or I'm like, when I need to ask for something, I like to soften it, and it's because of how we as a society want women to be. I mean,
and what's wrong with being nice when we ask a question?
Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that,
right? So
like, yeah, sure, we socialize women to be nicer, and sometimes that's bad, but in this case, I just don't think that's bad.
Right?
Men should be more like women in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone should be more like women.
in this
case.
instance. Yeah. I don't want to say across the board, because there are some things that we are socialized to do that I think are problematic. But
it's true.
I don't think like asking in a nice way is bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
So the last one is irregardless. Which is always a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a fun word, and I will use it sometimes. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't use it in a formal setting. Well, unless the whole point was to talk about words that are constructed differently than we might expect. Right. But people complain about it because regardless and irregardless mean the same thing. But there are so many examples of this in English. So, for example, flammable and inflammable mean the exact same thing. So if your complaint is, well, irregardless is redundant, well, so is inflammable. So, yeah. And?
Also, she says this about it. This doesn't mean what you think it means, hefe. Which is really weird to me that she decided to all of a sudden code mix here and say hefe instead of boss.
Well, I would think this doesn't mean what you think it means. Boss would sound kind of weird. So you can't, it's not a... She would have to say something like, I don't know, homie, or I don't even know. What would be a closer equivalent? Because it's like, I don't know. It's you're right. It's weird that she borrows a word from Spanish.
Yeah.
To I don't know what, bond herself to the reader.
Yeah, I have no idea what she's trying to do there. Because I don't know enough about her to know why she would use a Spanish word there.
I mean, she might be a Spanish speaker. I really don't know, but it does feel a little like pandering. But
in a weird way.
Who?
I know. To who?
That's the thing. Like, maybe pandering's even the wrong word, because it's like, I don't know. I just don't understand.
Yeah, so, and also she ends the article by saying, these 15 words are a great place to start trimming the fat from your prose. Bonus, you'll sound smarter. So
I mean, okay, with the stuff and things, if you use better nouns, like nouns that actually describe what you're talking about, then yeah, of course that's going to make you sound smarter. But I don't know.
But the idea that, I mean, it's problematic to me that there's this idea that the words that we choose to use define whether we're smart or not. I mean, that goes back to so many isms, right?
It's true, but she does say sound smarter,
That's true.
not makes you smarter.
Right.
And this is all about presenting yourself to a public. And when you present yourself in a certain way, then yeah, certain people are going to judge you. So basically what she's telling you implicitly is you will be judged if you use these words, which is true.
Yeah.
That part is true.
Yeah. But she like doesn't want to offer up any like statement that's like, even though it's fucking unfair,
right,
you're gonna sound smarter if you use these words and get rid of these, or you'll sound smarter if you don't use these 15 words.
Right.
So unless people are like, you know, couching things in terms of like, oh, there's systemic reasons why we don't like these 15 words, so maybe get rid of them and you'll sound smarter. I'm like, goodbye.
Right. No, you absolutely have to make explicit what is going on, and she doesn't do that because she buys into it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest problem I have with these 15 words kind of lists, and they come up all the time, and it's always by people that do buy into it. It's not
and no one ever asks a linguist.
No.
Well, except for the list. So thank you, the list, for asking me.
Yeah. Maybe they'll ask linguists because it would just be a bunch of nerd rage spilled onto the paper. It's gonna be like this podcast, right? This episode where we're like all over the place with our anger.
Hulk smash.
Hulk smash, exactly. Yeah. And of course, like as we're going down the list, there's not much more to say. Like all of the we have the exact same thing to say about all of these words that she uses because it's the same point over and over again, you know, like there's no reason to eliminate words from your these words from your vocabulary when you're speaking.
Are there any other words that we can think of that people complain about? I mean, literally it's just so picked on, and irregardless too. And one of the things people say about it irregardless is it's made up. Well, I hate to tell you, but all words are made up at some point.
Yeah. There's a whole, I mean, it's a can of worms, so I maybe shouldn't even bring it up, but Latinx is a thing that everyone's like, it's a made up word. And I'm like, I always want to say.
I mean, that's true, but like, again,
exactly.
All words are at some point, and many have been made up in the last 20 years that we don't complain about.
Yeah, exactly. It's always something that's like, there's something deeper going on when you're like, it's a made up word. I don't want to use it.
Yeah, it's an excuse. You don't want to actually directly attack what you want to attack because you know that will make you look like a shitty human being. So instead you attack the word or the language that the person uses because then you can be sneaky about it. But we see you. We see what you're doing.
Yeah, and this is a huge problem for singular they. You're being a fucking asshole when you, like, if you're saying, it's so hard for, if you're really gonna dig in deep and say, I can't use singular they because of, like, my grammar or whatever, you're being an asshole about something else.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to make an effort with that, and I know it's gonna be hard.
It's not that hard, though. I mean, people have been using singular they since at least Shakespeare's time.
It's true.
What are you talking about?
I was trying to give them a little bit of credit because I was just shitting on them. But yeah, it's true. It's not that hard. But
I mean, out of all the things that they could complain about, that is not hard. Like, so a lot of people get confused because they think when you use singular they, you're supposed to use singular agreement on the verb. So like they is, which if that is your dialect, that's fine. But for those of us that's not our dialect, no, you still use they are.
Yeah.
Just like with you, it doesn't matter if you is you singular or you plural, you still use you are. And it's fine. But if we had to switch to they is, then I would be like, okay, that's hard. Because that's a grammatical distinction.
Yeah.
That's really hard to break.
It is.
Okay, so I found another list. Of course, because I want to keep on raging. So, again, many of the same ones come up again, like really. But for some reason, this person doesn't like you.
Okay.
Because they don't want you to use, like, to speak directly to the reader, I guess, when you're, like, writing.
Oh. Of course, it goes back to writing.
Yeah, this one is specifically about writing, so I'm not going to shit on that. Like, that's really what it is. So, yeah, but there are times when you is acceptable still, I think. Feel and think. You should, find different words for those, of course, because they're not good enough.
Right.
I don't know.
When I was an English tutor, I was tutoring students that were in AP English, high school AP English, and their AP English teacher didn't want them to use the word be or any of its forms.
Oh, it's so bizarre how like a lot of people have this bugaboo about be.
Yes,
because they think it doesn't mean anything or doesn't do anything.
Oh,
it's very
so important. It's such
we can't do present tense without it in English for most things.
Right. It's yeah. So I was like, as a linguist, as I was seeing this, I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. But I have to like tutor, like help them get a good grade at the class and like, you know, rework the sentences to help them not use be. But it was so frustrating because it was like really hard to do because be is so, it's just everywhere and it's so important. And
it's so bizarre. Although there is one place where I have this weird hatred of it.
Oh.
And it's the hashtags am writing, am editing. Why not just writing, editing? Like, what's the am doing there? I hate it. And it's so stupid. And I know it's just me. And I'm not saying anybody should stop doing it because no, that's dumb. Right. But like, that is what I'm thinking. I'm like, ugh!
I totally do hashtag am writing. And I have no idea why. I saw it once. And that's the only reason why I use that hashtag.
Yeah, that's what people use.
Yeah.
But if it were me, I would just be writing.
Yeah.
Hashtag writing. Because that's... Why do you need the am? Anyway, it's a silly... Yeah. It's my pet peeve that is not a real thing. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I used to give my students the assignment of, like, tell me your linguistic pet peeves, and literally always cummed up. That is a remnant from my dissertation.
Oh my, that was a little dirtier than I was expecting.
I'm sorry. Comes up. Literally always comes up. I can't think of any other words that they really hated. But it's always at least like 5 or 6, like enough people in each class that hate literally.
This person also hates as.
Yeah, try to get rid of that. Try.
I mean, so there are 2 kinds of ases. One that introduces a full clause, and one that is more like a preposition, like as a linguist, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. They're talking about the first one. So as you write this word, poke out your eyes. That's literally the example they give. Like, no, that is first of all, that's a totally fine use of as, but they think that you should just use because instead.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't make sense because you write this word, poke out your eyes. No, that means something different.
Yeah.
Ask a linguist.
Yes, hashtag ask a linguist. Yeah, so I feel like anyone listening should totally tweet out us words that they've heard people hate that make no sense. Because I am so interested in this. Yes,
me too. And like the same words keep coming up again. Again, just came up. It's, there's obviously things that really trigger people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're reinforced in our English classes and in public school. So not just public school, just all school.
Yeah, school. Yeah.
School.
All right. Well, unless there's any other word that you wanted to discuss.
I don't think so.
Okay, me either.
All right.
That was us nerd raging on lists of words that you're not allowed to use anymore.
Yeah.
And don't forget, don't be an asshole.
Do not be a fucking asshole. Do not be an asshole, and use whatever words you want to use that aren't harmful to other people. All right. Bye.
This was literally the most beautiful and moving thing that I have ever heard.
I can't. I can't. Literally, I can't. Ew. Literally, I can't. Ew. Literally, I can't. Ew. Literally, I can't. Ew. Literally, I can't. Let's go. I can't.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by Chris Ayres for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com.
Your inbox is literally filled with penises.